Hello, everyone, and welcome to another WSI Digital Marketing webinar. Before we kick off, I just want to do a quick sound check, visual check to make sure we're coming through all right. You can just let us know by typing into the question box, maybe even dropping a line as to where you're located and joining us from today. Awesome, great, A-OK, loud and clear. Oh. North Brunswick, London, Brockville, awesome. Oh, nice to see a nice representation around the world joining us today. So thank you again for joining us for WSI's latest digital marketing webinar. This one is entitled 5 Must-Haves for Measuring Digital Marketing Success. Now, my name is Cheryl Baldwin and I will be your host today. I am the Director of Marketing from WSI Corporate, so I'm really happy to be here with you. Before we dive in to the presentation, just a few of those housekeeping items that we have to cover. Just so you know, yes, this webinar is being recorded. We will share a link as well as a copy of the slides after the session today. And as with all of our webinars, we do try to leave some room to answer some of your questions at the end of this. We'll try to get to as many as we can within the 45 minutes we have with you today. So just type them into the question box and we'll handle those at the end of the presentation section. Now, some quick info on WSI. We've been around for more than 25 years now. We've helped over 100,000 businesses worldwide in that time across many industries with their digital marketing strategies. And if someone was to ask me, I'd really say WSI is in the business of making other businesses grow and helping them navigate this complex digital marketing landscape. And one of the ways we do that is through webinars like these that are really designed to educate and share some best practices on specific digital marketing topics. And today, as I mentioned, we will focus on the topic of measurement, specifically digital marketing measurement and tracking the ROI of your digital marketing efforts. Now, we're actually constantly surprised by how many businesses don't take the time to actually measure the effectiveness of their digital marketing activities. They're spending money, they have leads and maybe sales coming in from their website, but they don't know how they got there or what marketing activities to actually attribute them to. And with next year, 2022, just around the corner, now is really the perfect time to be looking at what's working and what isn't from a marketing perspective as you plan out your strategies for next year. So to help you prepare on this front, this webinar, we're taking the time to discuss the must-haves every business should be leveraging when it comes to tracking their digital marketing ROI. And joining us today as our webinar presenter to talk more on this topic and share her expertise is one of our very valuable members of the WSI network, Denise Bowen. Now, Denise has over 10 years of experience in marketing, sales, and customer service. She is really passionate about helping businesses reach their growth goals by generating more qualified leads through their digital marketing efforts. She has extensive knowledge in website user experience, conversion rate optimization, paid search advertising, search engine optimization, the full gamut. She is very, very focused on making sure the clients and businesses they work with are always seeing a return on their investment and, really loves this aspect of digital analytics and measuring success. So a perfect person to have us joining today. So I know she's really excited. She has a lot to share, wants to get into it. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our webinar presenter, Denise. Denise, over to you.
Thank you, Cheryl. That was such a great intro. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are joining from today. Thank you so much for joining and spending some time today to discuss, as Cheryl mentioned, a topic that I am very passionate about, and that is measuring digital marketing success. While marketing analytics and driving through data may not be the most glamorous topic, it is critical when you are investing in your digital marketing. The more you know, it allows you to make decisions based on data rather than from the gut. And as Cheryl mentioned, what better time? We have entered the final quarter of 2021, and perhaps we already have started, or we will be starting to plan for 2022. And so we should all be measuring what we have done this past year to evaluate for next year. We need to look at what activities we should continue to invest in or perhaps stop investing in. So my backstory is I meet with businesses every week, perhaps just some like yourselves, and every meeting we ask, do you know how well your current marketing efforts are performing? Or which marketing campaigns are delivering the best results? And most of the time, 9 times out of 10, the answer is no, I don't know. And this really pains me. There are so many great tools and software to provide us with all the information we need. It's really difficult to attribute success and traffic coming into a source without some measurement tactics in place. And so let's look at what we're going to cover today. So the agenda on the screen here, first we're going to look at some benefits of measuring your digital marketing. And then we're going to dive into our 5 must-haves. And that is understanding the metrics better. So looking at some of the most common metrics, lead tracking attribution, knowing where they come from, testing, once you have all this data, what do you do? Dashboard and benchmark, so how to view your data, and lastly, competitor insights, seeing how you compare against your competition. But before we get started, I do want to run a quick poll. So when it comes to measuring your digital marketing activities, what's an area of focus for you in 2022? And this will be one that you can check all the ones that apply. There's a couple different options there. Perhaps you just want to get it set up. So you have nothing going right now and you just want to start your measurement. Maybe you have some things set up and you want to start understanding a little bit more about where they're coming from and get some more details. You can incorporate testing. Maybe you have all your information and you're just looking at how to use it better. Looking at dashboards or analytics reporting, maybe looking more at reporting and benchmarks that way. Or are you looking to look for gaps and opportunities through competitor insights? So we'll let the poll run there for a while.
Awesome. So I'm just going to give everyone maybe 5 more seconds to get your answers in. Okay, closing in 3, 2, 1. Okay, now I'll share those results.
Oh, wow, it's pretty evenly split. So we have the most people looking to understand where the leads are coming from. So we're definitely going to touch on that when we get to the attribution. But really, it seems there's a good amount of everyone looking to learn a little bit of everything. So we are going to cover it all. So there's something in here for everyone. Let's look into this. So before we get too much into details, let's discuss directly why is it important? What are some of the major benefits of measuring your online lead generation activities? And that is starting with the most obvious, the effectiveness. What is working and what's not working? If you are spending any money on any digital marketing effort, then it's important to know the performance. Let's say you are marketing to bring traffic to your website, like SEO, paid ads, email marketing. By tracking which of the website traffic takes a desirable action on your website, whether it calls you or fills out a form or makes a purchase, you can start to see which efforts are the most effective. What marketing is working? That leads into our next slide here, which you have already up there, ROI, the return on your investment for each effort. Once you can quantify the dollars made from a marketing effort, then you can look at that return. If you spend X amount on search engine optimization a month, then you can track how many users from organic search purchase something. If you're e-commerce, you can calculate the ROI and see which strategies create a positive return on that marketing investment. It also allows you to plan for the future. So we spoke about the timeliness of the webinar today. Maybe you're already looking at your budget for next year. Measuring will show you what you should maybe continue doing, or perhaps how you can improve some of your current activities. What needs to be changed? Ultimately, by having these numbers in place, it allows you to make smarter decisions on your marketing budget allocation in the future. And sometimes it's not just your marketing that can be changed. Perhaps having data will lead to a change you need to make in your internal operations or in your systems. This slide here is a real-life example of just that, and it turned out to be such a simple change. We had a client where we implemented tracking numbers, and it's something I'm going to talk more about later. And through that, we noticed a lot of the calls were going unanswered, and they all had a similar duration and time. So we tested the answering machine, and we noticed 1, it was way too long, and 2, it didn't address the needs of a customer. It was for John, press 1, for Joe, press 2, for Ellen, press 3. So we started suggesting we make changes to the phone system and message to be more client focused, speak to the needs and give more context. So press 1 for sales or press 2 for service, and put that information right at the start so they get that what they need right away. We started to see that the phone calls got longer and more calls were being answered because they were being directed to the right person and they were booking more jobs. So just by having phone reports, they made a data-driven decision to make a change in their operations or their systems, which ended up having a huge impact, all of which we could measure. It seems really simple, but we see stuff like this all the time. All right, so now we have a few reasons of why it's beneficial to measure your digital marketing. Let's dig into our first must-have, and that is understanding the metrics better. I need to start this section with a very large disclaimer that there are so many metrics you could be tracking. And so it's really, really crucial that you track what is important to you. I'm going to say this a few times in this webinar. I will go over some of the more common metrics that are typically measured, but all of this should be unique to you and your business goal. Okay, assuming your marketing efforts are in place to bring people to your website, some key metrics that you could look at is the amount of traffic visiting your site, the overall or total traffic. This can be broken down into the total number of users and new users, so unique users, unique people coming, but also the source of that traffic. Was it organic, paid, social? Maybe your brand is really strong and you have a lot of people typing your site directly into the URL bar. You can then look at the demographics of your website traffic, like the location, the age, the gender. You can see the technology they use to view your website from the device type, like a desktop, mobile, or tablet. You can see the device info, was it an iPhone or an Android? And even the browser, was it Safari or Windows or Chrome? Then more importantly, you can see the activity these users took on your website. How many pages did they view? What was the time on the total site or on each page? What was the conversion rate? This means the number of visitors who took a desirable action over the total number of site visitors. There is so much analysis that can be done just by looking through your website traffic data. Now, while website traffic to your website is great, most businesses then want that traffic to turn into a lead. They want that traffic to complete a goal or convert on their website. This is where lead tracking comes into play. Now, again, important to remember, different businesses will track differently depending on what the goal of your site is. What is it you want someone to do when they land on your website? Do you want them to call you? If your number is prominent on the site, then maybe phone tracking makes sense. Is your goal to have someone fill out a contact form? Maybe you want them to subscribe to your newsletter list or sign up to receive specials. If you have chat feature engaged, do you want them to engage in your chat? Do you track how many chats are started versus the ones that are turned into customers? These are all great examples of some of the main sources of generating leads. But sometimes you want a user to do something a little less direct. This is where you can track website events. You can track a specific click, for example. We have a client that wants to track the button, find a location near you. And so by tracking that click, this is their main goal of their website, we're able to see how often that button gets used. Maybe you have a video on your site and you want to see how often it gets played, or you have a search feature and you're curious about that. Perhaps maybe you have downloadable PDFs or a guide and you want to measure these downloads. These are all common website events. And then of course, if you have an e-commerce site, looking at sales specific measures would make sense. Things like purchases, the average order value, how many website visitors added something to their cart without completing a checkout. This is called shopping cart abandonment rate. Again, you could look at conversion rate of visitors who completed a purchase over the total number of website visitors, and what was the cost for the acquisition of that customer. This is where you can divide the total cost, whether it's in media spend in total or for a specific channel or campaign, by the number of new customers acquired for that same channel or campaign. This leads into the right into the next part on media spend. So according to eMarketer, digital ad spend will reach $389 billion in 2021. That is a lot of money going towards digital ad spend. And so when you're running paid ads, there may be some other metrics you want to consider. These are things you could look at. You could see impressions, so how many times your ad is viewed, the click-through rate, the number of users who clicked on your ad versus the total number who saw your ad or the impressions, the conversions of those who clicked, which could lead to your conversion rate, the users who converted versus the total users who clicked. You can see the cost for a click and the cost for a lead, and the return on your ad spend. What was your total return versus what you spent on ad dollars? Now, all of this may seem a little overwhelming, but if you're running paid ads, these are some really important metrics that you're going to want to pay attention to. There's some free tools online, or you can talk, this is where a WSI consultant can really help you guide you through these. But overall, you want to be measuring how much you're getting out from what you're putting in. And again, keep in mind that your marketing goals should dictate what you track and what metrics to care about. I should note that all of these metrics were very focused on website tracking. Of course, if you're running other metrics or other channels, you may want to look at other metrics like email marketing. You could look at open rate and click-through rate, or social posts. You may want to look at impressions and engagement. But this webinar is going to stay pretty focused on lead generation through websites. All right, now you're thinking, yes, Denise, I know why I want to track my marketing efforts. And I know some of the things I want to track, like traffic and goals. But how do I do this? So let's look at our second must-have, lead tracking attribution. If you're all sitting here like this thinking, huh, what is lead attribution? That is okay. Lead attribution is a fancy marketing term, and all it means is tracking or attributing that lead to a source, a campaign, or a channel. These could be things like SEO, paid ads, social media, email, etc. Now, lead attribution can be quite complex and it can involve many layers, but let's begin really simple on how to get started. And that is with Google Analytics, the basics of what you need for everything. If you do just one thing after this webinar, please let it be this. If you don't already have Google Analytics installed on your site, please do so. By installing your Google Analytics code and setting up your account, it is the best way to start tracking traffic and traffic sources. So as you can see in my screenshot here, this is an example of one of our clients, and you can see all the sources down the left-hand side: SEO, direct, PPC, social, referral, and email. So you see which traffic brought to the screen as users, that's the first arrow on the left, but also the traffic and the source that completed a goal, that's the other arrow on the right. Google Analytics can open up the door to so much more information. So let's look at how to set some of this stuff up. You have your website traffic with Google Analytics, but now let's talk goals. So remember I said each goal will be unique to you depending what your desired action is on that website. But here are a few of the main goals that we find businesses want to track. These are some really quick things you can do to measure these goals or these leads. They can be considered the low-hanging fruit, but we find a surprisingly large amount of businesses don't have these set up. And that's starting with phone calls. I think it's just the next slide. Oh, and next one. Perfect. So calls can be set up as a goal in Google Analytics, but you're going to want to use a tracking number. A tracking number is a unique number on your website that is only displayed on your website. Can you go back one? This number forwards through to your business number. The caller does not know the difference. They are calling this ghost number. However, by then looking at how many calls are placed on the tracking number, which again is only displayed on your website, you can see how many calls your website generates. Now we spoke about source tracking, so knowing where these calls came from. How does this work? This is called dynamic call tracking. And how it works is essentially you have a pool of these tracking numbers, which will rotate and show a different number based on the traffic source. This then allows you to break your data down to say X number came from organic, X number come from ads, X number come from social. You can even get reporting that shows right down to the number that called each tracking number. There are so many platforms out there that can offer call tracking. And phone switching can also be used in traditional marketing. If you hand out postcards or mailouts, by adding a unique number only to that piece of mail, you can measure how many calls that number receives to determine how successful the campaign is. Okay, so we're on the right slide. Let's look at how maybe you have, that was phone calls, but maybe your goal is to have website users contact you by email. If you just display your email on your website, one, you'll open yourself up to spam, but two, how will you know how that person or that lead found you? Did they get your email from your website, your truck, a sign on the ground, or a sign and to find your business card maybe on the ground? You could ask every lead how they found you, but it won't always be the most accurate. So we recommend adding contact forms to your website for users to fill out. When someone fills out the form, you get a copy of their inquiry by email, so you know that that lead came from your website. But now how do we track the source? We typically use unique thank you pages to track these form fills, meaning after a form is filled out, the user is directed to this thank you page, which they can only get to by filling out the form. We often see forms set up on websites, but without this thank you page step, it's just a pop-up or something that says your form has been submitted. By using the thank you page and setting that up as a goal in Google Analytics, you can track the specific form fill as a goal and the traffic source that that form fill came from. Similar, if you have an e-commerce website, you can set up purchases as goals in Google Analytics. So depending on the platform your site is built on, you can connect directly to Google Analytics, or you can use a plugin to help integrate the two. Here you can track the actual dollar spend that one lead equates to. This creates an opportunity to really know the true ROI of a campaign. So if you spend $2,000 a month on SEO, but you can see your organic traffic purchased $20,000 worth of product, that month you know your ROI is 10 to 1. But what if it's more complicated? These are simple tracking measures, and sometimes you'll need more information. With the exception of e-commerce, Google Analytics can only track the goal or the desired action a user takes on your website. But not all of these leads will turn into sales. Sure, you can use your average close rate and your average customer value to gain a better understanding of the ROI for these channels. But to have more accurate data, a CRM can be really useful. A robust CRM, on the next slide, it shows some of the things it can do. It can track the cycle of a customer. You can know the path of how they found you, what the dollar value is of that single client, and what was the cost to acquire them. CRMs can be quite complex, and there's so much to them that we actually have another webinar that's focused solely on CRMs and automation. So Cheryl will add that link to the chat in the recording here. If you're interested in learning more, I highly recommend checking that one out. It should also be noted that if you're running paid ad campaigns, you will want to use the platform directly, like Google Ads or Facebook, to understand the metrics a little bit deeper and to know what your return on your ad spend is. If you're running multiple campaigns, like in the next example on the slide, here it's on Facebook. Here you're going to want to dive deeper into the attribution. On the next slide, it'll show multiple campaigns within Facebook. Perfect. Knowing that a lead came from a paid campaign or a social campaign, in this case, in Google Analytics, it won't be enough. So here you're going to want to look into Facebook and see which ad, which campaign specifically is performing the best and which can be improved. This is especially the case if you're running shorter campaigns and you don't want to wait to see the longer trends in Google Analytics. You're going to want to know right away which ads are working. Okay, now we understand the benefits of lead tracking, and we even have some metrics we want to track and know the tools of how to track them. So what's next? This is where the fun begins. What do you do with all of the data? We test, and we test, and we test again. That brings us to our third must-have when you're measuring your digital marketing success, and that is testing. Whenever testing, you want to set a goal of what you're trying to accomplish. Maybe you're trying to get more people to convert from form fills or have more people click on a specific button. Then you start to test things to see what achieves those results. To start, it's always best to test the things that aren't working. How could they be better? So here's a few different things to try out. A/B or split testing, it's essentially the same concept. And it's the process of testing two versions of a web page, an ad, or maybe a product feature to optimize conversions or your goal. Perhaps you see a web page is not converting very well. You can try to make some changes and then you run two versions of that page, the original and the variant with your changes. You run them against each other to see what returns the best results. Some different things to test are colors, placement on a page, the wording, the images. You can even test the action. So you can redirect a user once they click on a button or a funnel to different pages to see what gets the best engagement. Be mindful not to test too much at one time. So if you're switching multiple things all at once, you won't be able to tell which one was making the difference. Start by testing one at a time, waiting for the results to come in, and then starting to test something else. There's this often perception that testing needs to be really complicated, but here on this slide is an example of how simple it can be. So this is an example of a split test we actually did on our own website. So we have a landing page that had a CTA, or a call to action is button. And what we were trying to do is we were trying to drive people to fill out our form for a consultation. Really simple. The landing page had a race car theme. And so we wanted to be cute and punny and try the words "start your engines" to go with the theme. As leads are more important to us than cute marketing, we didn't wait very long until seeing that there were very little conversions from "start your engines." And so we tested "start your engines" against "get in touch." And so when visitors landed on our page, they would see one of two versions: the original "start your engines" and the variant "get in touch." We let the test run long enough, and you can see the results are already up here. Get in touch got twice as many conversions than "start your engines." Maybe people didn't know what "start your engines" meant. Maybe it was too vague and confusing, but it was the data we needed to permanently make that button change. Another testing tool is heat mapping. So this is a graphical representation, and it shows user behavior using color coding. So it can track how a user interacts with your website by tracking their mouse movement and then color coding the heavy areas where their mouses are. This can be really, really helpful if you are looking at your analytics and you see a web page gets a lot of traffic coming in, but users are not taking the desired action on that page. By looking at the heat map, you can see if they're distracted by elements on the page, or maybe your important information is too far down, so they're not even getting far down up and up on the page. With these maps, you can then make changes and continue to test results. So up here is an example of how we use heat mapping. Looking at this page, it's for a doors and windows company. You can see the button that the arrow is pointing to has the most clicks. There's the most activity on that button. And this is to take users to a gallery of glass inserts. So we see that this is the highest clicked element. This prompts us to tell the client that we need more updated images of glass inserts because users really want to see this. We also added more conversion opportunities to that gallery page, as clearly this is somewhere traffic wanted to go, and so we want to capitalize on that. Okay, and now here's where it gets really, really great. In this example on the screen here, we pull both testing techniques together. So we started with heat mapping on the site, and as you can see, there's people kind of clicking all over. That's what all those little blue buttons are. But what we really wanted to do was get people to click on the green "get a quote" button. That's in the top right in the green, which is a more direct path to fill out their quote form. So we thought, how can we make this button more noticeable? And now we are in the process of split testing the color of that button. So the next slide, you'll see we have the original green button showing up against the new variant, the blue button. It's too early for us to conclude any outcome yet, but we're going to keep an eye on this to see if it's worth making that change. And that's a really important note too. You need to run tests long enough to have a large enough sample size of either visitors or data to make a conclusion. As you can see, there are a lot of different things you can do and test with all this data coming in, but it's critical that testing is not a one-time thing. Testing is a cycle. You test something out, you analyze the results, and then you repeat with something different. You can always be jigging or trying new things to achieve the most optimal results. This segues right into how to view our results, and that's our fourth must-have when measuring your digital marketing success: dashboards and benchmarks. Okay, for time. All right. A comprehensive dashboard can include all of these metrics in one place. It can be broken down into different sections and be customized to show what matters to you. It's important to have consistent reporting so that you can start to look for trends. You wouldn't want to make a major decision by only looking at 1 month's worth of data. However, once you start to review month over month or a trend for a season, you may see how you want to impact and how you want to change your marketing moving forward or for the next year. These reports also make it really easy to compare to previous months or previous years. If you're a seasonal business, maybe looking at this month compared to last month or this quarter to last quarter wouldn't make the most sense. Instead, you're going to want to look at a year-over-year comparison, and a report can make that really easy to view. This next slide is an example of a reporting software that we use, and it's one of our client examples here, and it shows the different sections based on channels like SEO and social, and it also compares to the previous year. This report is integrated to pull information from our Google Analytics, our Google My Business page, our call tracking software, our social media accounts, our ad campaigns, and our email marketing. It is one central place where we can have an overview of all of the information. And then if we need to dive deeper, if we see something we want to investigate, we can go into that specific platform to learn more. All right, let's take a look at our fifth and final must-have of the day, and that is competitor insights. Now, this is where you get to take the next step. the step that is often forgotten about. Once you understand your metrics and your marketing data, you get to go further and see how does that compare with your competition. Of course, having a goal up front of what you want to learn from this analysis is always recommended, but competitive research is important as it can reveal maybe some gaps of what others are doing and that you're not, or maybe you can see something your competitors aren't doing that you are, and it's an opportunity to put more into it. And so it's really helpful to first have a good understanding of your marketing success when you're doing these comparisons. And just like testing and reporting, it's not a one-time thing. Ideally, you are reviewing a competitor analysis 1 to 2 times a year, as like you, they may be changing their marketing efforts and you want to stay on top of it. Through competitive research, you can look at things like website traffic, so you can compare traffic volume to your site versus others. You can compare audiences, you can see your competitors' top pages, products, services, categories, what content's the most popular. Perhaps you can start to market that too. You can do SEO research, organic research, so you can see your top organic keywords and search engine rankings and how they compare. You can see the number of keywords and the estimated traffic it brings in. You can see how many backlinks they have, which perhaps creates some opportunities for you to take those as well. And you can start to gauge the costs by looking at their advertising. So analyzing competitor ad budgets and keywords. See what words your competitors are bidding on and which are delivering the most traffic to their site with estimated costs. You can also dive into their social media. So how often are they posting on which channels? If their accounts are growing and at what rate? You can even see what specific content gets the best engagement. Of course, having all this data is only the first step. You're then going to want to take action and start creating strategic plans to accomplish your goal. We believe competitor insights are extremely valuable. So valuable that we actually have a whole other session on this too, and it's dedicated to competitor insights and analysis. Cheryl is going to put that in the chat for those interested in learning more about that as well. But for this presentation, let's finish with a summary of some of our key takeaways. Starting with number 1, track what is important to you. As mentioned, the metrics are endless. So hone in on what you care about, what your goals are, and let that dictate what you track or measure. Take advantage of all the software and tools out there to track these metrics and attribute the success of leads to a specific effort. Number 3, continuously test and analyze, especially the things that are not performing as much as you'd like them to. Discover the changes you need to make to get the best results possible. Number 4, display this data in one place, like a comprehensive dashboard or report. This is the best for looking at large amounts of data in a really easy to read, digestible format. And lastly, take that next step and see how metrics compare to your competition. Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Please put all questions, comments, feedbacks in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to everything.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Denise. Wow, what a lot of great information you shared there. Now, before we get to Q&A, though, I just want to mention that we obviously discussed a lot across what you should be doing around your digital marketing measurement and really kind of just touched the surface on things. Each of these sections could be their own in-depth webinars on their own, but depending on your team and resources, you may require help with this. And so if that's the case, that's where we can actually step in. We're, remember, here to help with all of your digital marketing needs, measurement being one of those, and measuring your efforts and your ROI on your digital marketing activities. And to actually get you started with this, you know, as a little bit of a thank you for registering for our webinar today, Denise mentioned competitive research and doing competitive analysis to see how you stack up against others in your industry is a really important component of your measurement activities. And so we're offering you a free competitive analysis that will actually provide you with a high-level insights just to get you started on this and help you kind of see how your online presence stacks up against some of your top competitors. So, you know, if you're wondering why your competitors may be getting more online leads or sales than you, or you're curious just how your website traffic and visibility compares to some of those in your industry, our free competitive analysis report is a great starting point. And again, it'll give you some high-level information to get you started, and further discussions can go from there with your WSI consultant. So I'll be posting a link for that offer, so you can click on it and do that. We'll also share the link in our follow-up emails as well, along with the recording of our slides, recording of this webinar and the presentation slides. So let's just get over into some Q&A. And I think the first one that I kind of want to take a look at is, you did talk about on the testing front, you kind of put a little bit of an asterisk there around you need to make sure you're running tests long enough to actually get some information. Actually, one of the examples you showed, you're still waiting for feedback to know what is the right color of button. And I guess the question is how do you know how long you should be running a test for in order to get that meaningful data to actually make key decisions?
Right, good question. So when you're running testing, it's actually going to vary depending on your website and how much traffic it really generates. So if you get a lot of traffic daily, then you're going to get a good sample size a lot sooner than maybe if you only had a few visitors a day. So ideally, though, we like to say you run your tests for a minimum of 1 week, even if you have the most traffic, as different days may have different traffic trends. And then we probably recommend at least 2 weeks to get enough data, but we've left some running for over a month if just the website traffic coming in is a little bit lower.
Awesome, great. And I know that you talked about, obviously Google Analytics is the very first step to some of this. And, you showed how it can pull the traffic resources, sources. Maybe you can just speak a little bit, like, is that just dynamic that gets pulled, right? Like how much setup has to happen, but a little bit more on maybe just commenting, how in depth can you get with Google Analytics? Like, when do you have to move from Google Analytics to maybe another more specific platform depending on the campaigns you're running?
Yeah, so Google Analytics has a ton of information. We just scratched the surface today. So yes, it is. Once you set up your tracking code on your website and you have your Google Analytics account all connected, it is dynamic. You'll start to track that traffic to your website and it will pull the sources for you. What you need to set up in Google Analytics is the goals. So if you don't have any goals set up in Google Analytics, and those are things like the call tracking and the lead forms, then it'll only kind of just be able to generate the traffic and it won't know the actions that you take on your website. Same thing with website events. So I always say it's the best place to start to at least get your traffic and your traffic sources. You can start to dive through all kinds of information, but then when you want to take that next step is start to see how those users interact with your website and when they turn into a lead. And that's when you need to do some more setup within Google Analytics.
Awesome. And also, you showed some heat mapping, which is really kind of looks visually really compelling, but are there any specific tools, or even how does someone go about even getting started with something like that?
Sure. So depending on where your site or landing page is hosted, it may already come with it. For example, I know HubSpot has that feature built right in. A lot of landing page platforms like Unbounce and other ones, you can do kind of, especially split testing, you can do that right on there. Heat mapping, though, we personally use Microsoft Clarity, but we've also used Hotjar and Crazy Egg and Fangui, and there's all kinds of different ones that you can set up where you just, some accounts are free, some are paid, but you put in your URL and it will do it for you there.
Awesome, awesome. So maybe just you have to kind of take a look at the tech you might be using. You may have it, or if not, then you can inquire further on it.
Yeah, and depending how much you need, you may be able to get by with some free software as well.
Awesome. One of the things you showed was dashboards, right? And I loved how you had that scrolling one of like an actual dashboard that you had set up. If someone was to get started, how would they go about doing that? And what are some of those key metrics that you always make sure are set up on there, or that you're looking at from month to month and even year to year?
Sure. So when you're looking at your dashboards or any sort of reporting, I would first make sure you're noting what your business goals are. So what is it that you actually care about seeing? And then your goals will dictate what you track on your reports. However, some really common ones that we would put in every single report is traffic and website goals that are broken down by the source. the conversion rates we like, change in leads. So sometimes conversion rates will only tell you the amount of people taking action versus the traffic to your website. But sometimes it's really just good to see overall, year over year, are you getting more and more leads, even though your conversion rate may not reflect that depending on your traffic volume. Organic rankings are good to put in there, PPC impressions, click-through rate, cost per lead. If you are running paid ad campaigns, we do a little bit of social engagement if you have a social campaign going. So you can put some really basics ones for each channel would be a really good place to start. But it's always a good idea to focus on the conversions and leads if that's what the goal of your website is.
Yeah, and ultimately those metrics that are going to actually drive decisions for you, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. Awesome, thanks so much. I'm just watching a bit of the time, so I have one more question, and hopefully we can get to it. And it is around the competitive insights aspect. And, you know, some people are going to know who their competitors are, right? But sometimes you're not 100% sure who might be out in your landscape, or there may be people that you're not aware of. What would you say to someone, or how do you recommend them identifying maybe some of the people they definitely want to keep track of?
Sure. So, I mean, it's a good idea to always have some market research to know who your competitors are. When you're doing an analysis, we recommend looking at your direct competitors. So these are competitors that are in your area who offer a similar product or service. And then we recommend choose companies that are both larger and smaller than you. So when you're doing you're gonna have to do your market research to see who your competitors are, but then don't try and stick ones that are just like you. It's always great to look at big ones and small ones to see where you fall in that range. And the same goes for new and old companies too. Don't discard new businesses. Try looking at legacy businesses to see what they're doing, but also some of the new up and comers too. So if you keep kind of a wide range in who you're doing an analysis on, it may show you different strategies and then where you lie in that spectrum.
Awesome. Great. So helpful. And, I think one of the links I posted in the chat does go to one of our blog posts we have on this as well, which has some information just to help you identify that stuff and determine who you should be looking at too. So you can always look at that. So Denise, thanks so much. We're, some great questions and answers there. Before we kind of finish off and wrap up though, I do just want to remind people that we've written a lot on digital marketing. I mean, actually, we've published a third book on digital marketing. And one of the chapters in our book, which is available on Amazon, actually focuses on tracking metrics that matter. And so that's always a good thing to kind of catch up on based on some of the information you learned here today. So I always point you in that direction. But I want to just thank you, Denise, for taking the time for joining us today. Going through those 5 must-haves and just sharing, your expertise and some great examples on how people can kind of start thinking about where they can be implementing these. So thanks again to you. Thanks to everyone who attended today and taking time out of their schedule. Again, you will get an email follow-up with links to the recording and the slides, so watch out for that. We will have a survey that pops up at the end of this session when you leave, so please take the time to share your feedback with us. We'd love to hear your comments and suggestions for future topics as well. So with that, I would just like to wish everyone a great day, and thanks everyone.
Thank you.
All the best.